I'm Ted Orme-Claye, SBC Media business journalist. I'm joined today by Reed Kuhn, who is the Senior Director at Branch. How have you found the event so far, and what would you say has been the key highlight for you?
Hard to pick one highlight, honestly. The event overall has been excellent. This is our first time actually being here, and even in the community of the sports betting industry. So for me to come across the pond, as it were, it's been a lot of fun. Social events have been great. I think the highlight obviously was my session. We had a very lively discussion. We covered the future of betting, how apps are allowing people to sort of transcend the normal experience in the gambling community. And we batted around a lot of crazy ideas. I think it was a lively discussion, so that's got to be the highlight so far.
Nice, great to hear that you've been enjoying it. So can you just give us an overview of Branch and your general areas of business?
Yeah, Branch is a mobile deep linking and attribution company. So based in Silicon Valley, we sort of invented the game of sending users directly into native apps. So we live in a world that went digital went mobile, and within mobile, now native apps are taking over the entire industry. So we help customers play in that space. We help the end user end up in the app, we help drive and accelerate app adoption, and then we provide the data on the back end so that a business actually knows where their users are coming from and what happens once they arrive. So being able to attribute down funnel events to where they came from. Did they come from email or from social media or from their friend sharing them a link? So we tie all that together, we help provide that data, but mainly as an end user, what you get is a really slick experience going into apps.
Okay, sounds very interesting. Obviously, you've just mentioned that you're based in Silicon Valley, a US-based company, and are now getting interested in the European sports betting space. What was it that attracted you to the industry over here?
Mostly because it was greenfield space. We traditionally are working with the big tech giants, Amazon, Uber, Twitter, Spotify. Those are very big platforms with massive amounts of traffic. So just getting one thing perfect means a lot. When we looked at all the things that we had learned, whether it was from a shopping app or a music app or a travel app, we realized that those same tricks could be applied to the sports betting apps. And so we see a massive opportunity. Now in the US, we sort of skipped over the whole retail process. We went directly into native apps. Most users in the United States now, if they're active as a gambler, they're using a native app. That's not the case in Europe. So we see kind of an opportunity gap to take people from mobile web or desktop into an app, which is going to be a completely different arrangement because the app is the digital interface between your business and the end user. So we want to help do that. We want to help bring people onto the right platform, engage them in a seamless way, and this is a relatively new industry. We just hadn't gotten there. We're out conquering retail apps because that's where the money is, social media apps because that's where the traffic is. But now we're finding our way into smaller industries with more focused use cases, but we realize that we have a whole bag of tricks that we can rely on to actually move the needle for their business.
Okay, brilliant. And you've just touched on this a little, but obviously the US industry is new and emerging. There's more and more states are opening up to legalize online gambling. What would you say is some of the key differences between Europe and the North American scene?
Yeah, North America just overturned a federal law that prohibited gambling outside of the state of Nevada and a few select locations. In doing so, it was really tech platforms that came in. So the leaders in the industry right now are app first, and they've leapfrogged the traditional progression from retail or physical brick and mortar into web. So that's what the biggest difference is. And when you require someone to open an account and download an app, you now have a connection with them that you didn't have before. You can send an email and bring them right into the app. You can send a push notification, pull them right into the app. You can even do peer-to-peer sharing directly between apps. So they learned those strategies from big tech, and I think that's the defining difference between that market. And so that really unlocks a lot of potential, but every state that legalizes or launches is a new land grab. So right now it's hyper competitive, there are tons of promotions, it's not sustainable, they're throwing a lot of money at new users. Unfortunately, I think a lot of apps and platforms have a leaky funnel in their engagement cycle. So they're throwing money and they're acquiring new users, but those users are leaving because they're not engaging them in the right way. So there's still an opportunity, I would say inherently it's a more valuable space. We just went from $5 billion to $50 billion in 1 year. That's a lot. We're going to probably eclipse $100 billion in handle this year. So it's a massive market. It's exploding. So the growth there is creating that competitive dynamic.
So going back to Branch's own sort of areas of business, who are some of your biggest partnerships with, and what are the nature of these relationships?
Yeah, we got our start with some very big players, the Adobes of the world. So big tech companies that knew if you want a best-in-class platform, you're also working with best-in-class tech stack providers. So it's never a build everything on your own mentality. It's always been a strategic alliance of niche players that can do one thing really well. So we play in that space, we do our thing really well. So we signed on with Uber, Twitter, Spotify. These are massive global juggernauts that we're serving, and then we're working our way down the food chain. And here in the UK, we worked with Boohoo Fashion. I wouldn't have gone from Uber to Boohoo in one leap, but again, we realize the same rules apply. We're doing the same things fundamentally, and we're allowing platforms to wield our tools in whatever market they're in.
So can you just give us a bit of information about your personal background and how you came into where you currently are with Branch, and what connection have you had to the betting industry in the past?
Yeah, my history in the betting industry is complicated. It involves a strange coincidence with MC Hammer, the famous rapper. We founded a company together to manage UFC fighters. I was the statistician, the strategic advisor, and I realized it was a small enough sport, not enough people were doing math, and the overlap between math nerds and cage fighting fans is barely anything. If you draw a Venn diagram, they're barely touching. So I realized there wasn't really a market for that. What people said was, why don't you use what you know to gamble? And so that's what we've been doing. We're doing quantitative-based judgments on who's going to win, why, doing the best we can as we are in any market, right? But we've been pretty good at it.
Okay, that's a really interesting story. That's very unique. So you've obviously just mentioned UFC and the stats involved in that. A lot of sports fans, a lot of the ones I know at least, sort of view the UFC and MMA in general as quite a tricky market to bet on. Why would you say that is? Is it just because it's very multi-dynamic and I guess hard to predict because of that?
Yeah, it's like boxing times 5, right? You have wrestling and jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and karate combined with people throwing fists at each other. So it is an inherently more complicated sport than traditional boxing. You also have the complication that it's an individual sport. So in team sports, one person can have a bad day, or one play, someone can make a mistake, and the rest of the team is going to make up for it. So in general, the team will perform to expectation. In an individual sport, if they're feeling sick, if they were injured and they didn't tell anybody, or they just blinked at the wrong time, MMA is unforgiving for one mistake. So you can be winning for 14 and a half minutes and then lose the fight in the final seconds. It makes MMA very exciting. It also makes it tricky from a gambling perspective, but that also means that the market is susceptible to the same forces that I am. So I'm just trying to take a much more quantitative approach. I can expect to lose plenty of times. You can't just back the favorite and win in the long run. You need to be a little bit more savvy about that. It makes it fun, it makes it interesting. I was a child of the 80s and watched ninja movies, so I still think this is fascinating. I grew up on The Karate Kid. So for me, it's fun. Now it's also, I get to do math and science, and that makes it even more fun.
Okay, brilliant. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for taking time to speak to us, Reed.
Cheers.